competency-based models. So that was only 10% of my time. It was just a small grant. So when I had the opportunity to go to Helix Education and do that full time, I jumped at the chance. And so that's what I get to do. I work with a lot of different institutions, private, public, nonprofit, for-profit, and share what I'm going to share with you. So, so as we go along, feel free to raise your hand, stop me. We can take questions as we go. I'm going to try and be mindful of the time. I'll try and keep this to about half an hour, or maybe a little bit less. And I'd rather have it be interactive. I fully do not expect to get all the way through my slides, and that's fine. I don't really. They're there, and they're helpful. They're a guide, but I'd much rather us have a conversation, and I'll try and leave some extra time for Q&A at the end. So.
Tom, do you want to introduce John too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this little smartphone on the desk may all of a sudden just erupt with sound at any given point, and that would be John in Washington D.C. John Mott is the. Oh, are you there, John? Hang on. Okay, hang on. Let me see. I can hear you, but you're plugged in, but I don't think it's coming through. So, here, talk a little bit. Still not coming through. I can here. This is really good.
I think this only allows one connect.
Yeah, I've got you on speakerphone. I'm not sure if the people in the back can hear you. Can you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we're gonna try and. We'll try and.
I'll go see if they can get us another set of speakers. I don't think.
Actually,
I don't think you can do the US.
Yeah, John. Let me hang up, or let's switch over to the computer audio. Can you? Because right now I've got you on my phone. I'm just gonna switch over to computer audio on the GoToMeeting.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's try that. Okay, say something. Oh, I just hung up on you. Sorry, John.
There are 2 other callers on the call.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, and let me plug you in. Okay, say something.
Is that working?
Yep. Okay, you're wired in now.
All right, yeah, that works a little better.
Don't
Cool.
forget caffeine. You got it on.
Yeah, so John, I was about to introduce you, but since you're here, do you want to do a quick little intro?
Yeah, I'll do a quick intro myself. So my background is academically all things in political science, but ended up working in instructional technology both as a grad student and then full-time at BYU for 10 years. Was the director of CTL back when it was called the Center for Instructional Design, and did some campus-wide academic technology coordination. Worked at TD Ameritrade for a while, doing client-facing education and then internal learning and development for a while. And now I'm working in a company called Learning Objects, where we have built out a personalized and adaptive learning platform that, among other things, supports competency-based learning. So that's a very quick intro, but sort of like Tom, my passion is about, putting tools and content and models that help students learn more effectively and more efficiently. We've been talking about the 2 sigma difference since the mid-'80s, and I don't think we've quite realized that, especially at the degree level. I mean, maybe we can see it happen in individual math courses, but we're certainly not there in terms of providing differentiated experiences at the degree program level. That's what I'm pretty excited about.
Awesome. Thanks, John. And so, John, one thing that we should probably just do is, so that you can see my slides and so that you can share slides. Do you?
Yeah, why don't I make you presenter right now?
Perfect.
Did that come over to you?
Let's see. Oh, you've got,
Oh, yeah, there you are.
yeah, you saw my
I
camera.
saw your video for a minute.
Yeah. Let's see, I'm gonna share.
See if two educational technologists can make this work.
Okay, so I can do the webcam. Let me
It should just let you show your screen.
yeah.
You see a show my screen option?
No. It doesn't, I don't see,
Huh.
I'm not listed as presenter yet.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
I need to change. There you go.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay. So, and then I'm all wired up here, so I wish I could turn my computer around and show you. We've got, in the room, we have about 25, 30 people.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's a good crowd. It's,
It is more like 40.
oh, is it, okay.
But
Yeah.
both these rooms, if they're full, you have about 60 people, so.
Okay.
You've got at least 40 here.
All right, fantastic. And so, John, how about we do this? With me sharing my screen, you'll be able to see the slides I'm going through. Can you see those?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep, absolutely.
great. And then I will, I'll go for about 20 minutes, and then why don't we have you go, and then we can take questions. How's that?
That sounds great. And like you, I'm happy to keep this a dialogue, so
Yeah.
let's do it that way.
So John and I, both at different companies, but really both companies that care a lot about pushing the envelope on making education more accessible, more affordable, and especially with competency-based education, really trying to figure out how to bring it into more of the mainstream. There are a few institutions right now, WGU is one of them, who are very successful with the competency-based model, but they were built from the ground up. So they were competency-based from the beginning. So the challenge is, how do you help other people think about competency-based education and move towards it? So to give you a quick overview, this is where I'd like to go. When I said 5 things about competency-based education, it's really these 5 questions. So what is CBE? Who's doing it? What are the considerations? So that's a nice way to say risks and benefits. You can tell that this was meant for, client-facing. How does it work? And how do I get started? So first of all, competency-based education. I like the EDUCAUSE definition, and it's really kind of distilled down to the essence of what CBE is, and it's really just awarding academic credit based on mastery of clearly defined competencies. And call them competencies or call them outcomes, but essentially you really define those outcomes and you figure out how to measure those, and then you can award academic credit in a very flexible way based on that. So it's not how many hours you're in a seat. It's not, the Carnegie unit has been around for a really long time, over 100 years. And so that whole idea of credit hours, did you know that it actually started out, so Dale Carnegie was pushing that in the early 1900s, early 1900s. It was a retirement metric. It was meant for teachers' retirement plans, and that's how they measured their retirement. And so that was the credit hour, and then it just became a very convenient way to sort of measure how many hours you're teaching, and then that sort of spilled over into the course. Its use in measuring courses. I'm taking 15 credits, I'm taking a 3 credit hour course. All of that comes back down to a unit that was actually created for retirement of teachers. So, and so for a long time, this idea, this is not new, but the question really is, why not measure learning? If it just seems like a good idea, if that's the thing that we're delivering to students, if it's learning, why not measure that? But it turns out it's a little more complicated, and old habits die hard, and so it's still mostly about the credit hour these days. Financial aid, everything else, it all revolves around the credit hours that you're taking as a student. And it's very tricky. Once you start changing that or replacing that with other things, you kind of blow up a lot of what higher education sort of knows how to do in terms of business process. So we'll set all that aside and just say, what if? Okay, what if we could measure learning? What if we could do something different? And so some common features of competency-based education. And again, what I gave you before, that definition, just the idea of defining, awarding academic credit for clearly defined outcomes or competencies. That's really, I think, about the only thing that everyone can agree on for competency-based education. All these other things, think of them as like, these are the add-ons. These are the different, these are common, but these are sort of more add-ons to competency-based. So emphasizing mastery, de-emphasizing time, I think that you'll find a lot of agreement on that. Assessments playing a central role. Individualized support for learners. Again, if you're going to let everyone sort of go at the right pace for them, then you've got to figure out, you no longer have a cohort, right? And so you have to figure out how to support the students. You don't want to fire all the faculty. That's part of the well, I mean, maybe, should we? No, absolutely not. And that's sometimes that, there's a lot of sort of fear about what happens, if we change things. But in fact, the faculty play an even just as important a role, if not more so. Very much a lot of one-on-one contact time. But ultimately, it also boils down to something that's very friendly to adult learners and especially people that already have developed some skills in different ways. Maybe military service, maybe starting a business, or just working a job. So the flexibility, meaning accounting for prior knowledge. So we don't all have to start at square one. I mean, if that's where you need to start, then that's where you start. But if you already know the basics, then why not accelerate and start at the place that's right for you. And then also just allowing the pacing to be variable as well. All of these things are only possible if you decouple from sort of this more traditional notion of we all go at the same pace, we all learn together. And that has its benefits. So, I'm not suggesting that we do away with traditional higher education, but I do think that there's a lot of benefit to, and there's a whole other market, a whole other group of people that would benefit from a more flexible way to learn. So I just throw this up because I like games, and another option, and I'll just quickly, this is Candy Crush for my parents who don't know that. Everyone else I'm sure does. So basically what you have is like a pathway, right? And as you reach different levels, essentially you can't go past that level until you've cleared some kind of test, or until you've hit a certain score or achievement. And that's a way to think about, that's one way to approach self-paced learning and having gating, so that the system gives you challenges at a certain level, and then once you clear that, you can move to the next thing. Especially in areas that build from more simple concepts to more complex. That gating, it's ideal if it can be automated. The downside of gating is if you're waiting on a faculty member and it's 2 in the morning and this is your time to study, then that's a real challenge because you're on hold until somebody grades your essay or something like that. Question, Dr. Graham?
I'm just wondering if your concept of competency-based allows for students to select timing or a pathway in which they would interact with other students. In other words, like, I want to go through this competency-based course in this amount of time, or this is how I plan it out, and there are options so that other students could do select the same
Right.
path. So it's not independent study, it's
Yeah.
it's still flexible, but it's collaborative.
And so that's a great area. I think that's a fantastic. That's an interesting place that I think a lot of ed tech companies are thinking about. I mean, I think about that in terms of what I call micro cohorts, and in a lot of ways the system can know where you are, and so you can also allow the technology to assist in the creating of groups or pairs, and I think that's interesting. The more we know and the more we can construct a student profile, we can also say, hey, let's get all the students together from a certain area. Once your N is big enough, once you have enough, WGU has 50,000 students, so they have in any given intro to biology course between 5,000 and 10,000 students. So it's a pretty good bet that someone's on the same page as you right now. And so, once you get to scale, I think that becomes really interesting. And I'm particularly interested in technologies that would assist faculty in creating cohorts or allow students to do it themselves. So thank you. John, do you want to add to that at all, or should I just kind of plow through this and then turn it over to you?
No, I mean, the one thing I would add really quickly is that CBL does not imply either asynchronous or synchronous or cohort or not cohort. What it really implies is personalized learning paths, and we're actually working with a client who wants learners to be able to switch back and forth between asynchronous independent and face-to-face cohort based on how they're progressing across different learning objectives. I mean, you can imagine that's a tricky switch to make in a learning platform, but the CBL does not imply one modality.
Right. That's a really good point. And so I probably shouldn't dwell on this too much, but I think exactly, I totally agree. I think it's these sort of options that I was showing here really are that, and you can be face to face, you can be asynchronous or synchronous. It's competency-based education really boils down to clearly defined competencies that for which you award academic credit in, and then the flexibility that just having that be your focus, and so if that allows you to de-emphasize time. Doesn't mean you necessarily give up or do away with time, but you can de-emphasize time and then you're emphasizing mastery in its place. Yeah.
With this gated pathways concept, I think one of the challenges you're going to face is sequencing the competencies in a specific order that makes sense. I can see linking or address that challenge of sequencing them in a way that works for all learners.
Right.
Would you mind repeating the question for me?
The question was, how do you address sequencing the different the different lessons or modules in a way that makes sense for all learners?
Yeah.
And I mean, my take on that is the more you can tag or align or connect outcomes to granular content, the more you can understand, and tag that and tag those same outcomes, competencies, objectives, or whatever, tag them also to assessment, formative and summative assessment items. The more you can make that connection and say, okay, you have, assume you can start with a pretest and you can identify, hey, you can skip modules 1, 5, and 7, but you really ought to drill into the rest. And that's just a way to, you're not awarding academic credit at that point, and so multiple choice is probably okay. You can, with a pretest, you can make some inferences and help the student know what she knows and know what she doesn't know. And so that's as far as I would go. But I wouldn't even hide the content. I would still allow the student to be able to see all the content, but essentially you're personalizing it and you're saying turn left, turn right, you should spend your time here, you don't understand this concept as well as you understand that one. Yeah, question?
So if you were to strip this down to its essential components, essential elements, isn't the alignment of the objective, the alignment of the instruction, and the alignment of the assessment, isn't that really the defining characteristic of competency-based? And
Yes.
everything else, the individualization and the multiple paths or single paths, those are other considerations that are secondary to the definition.
Absolutely, because the definition is creating clear and measurable outcomes, and then your ability to align your content, your assessments, making it measurable, making it aligned to granular bits of learning content. All of that is, that's at the core of allowing it to be personalized, because the more the system can understand what what the relationship is between you not succeeding at this series of maybe 5 questions that are all aimed at this objective, the more you can help that student understand that some time needs to be spent reinforcing there. And in fact, a lot of systems, I think, are now at the point where they can actually add additional content. You've gone through formative practice, and so we're going to actually add some additional content here. It's a little bit like a very sophisticated choose your own adventure book. There are lots of endings, and based on your choices and based on your abilities, you're going to be guided in different areas. John, do you want to?
Hey, Tom.
Yeah, do you want to touch that?
One comment about that. What we're finding
Andy,
working
by the way, that was that?
Andy Gibbons.
Yeah, that was Dr. Gibbons with that question.
Oh, hey Andy, how you doing? So one thing we're finding with different clients, and it's academic institutions, publishers, other providers, is that their subject matter experts, their instructional designers are having to think of content development and learning activity design in very different ways, because they're having to create things in much more granular fashion and tag them against not just course competencies, but against learning objectives and sub-learning objectives and skills that are supporting those learning objectives. Whatever depth they want to get to remediate at, they're having to rethink the way they create and structure content. And sometimes that's a massive cultural shift as much as anything. I'll just mention, I think you had David Wiley come and talk about his project last week. One thing that I know he's doing, if you imagine trying to build multiple levels of remediation for every topic along the path toward the achievement of a competency, that's pretty daunting. So what he's doing is he's building a straight path and then watching the data, and where the students struggle, he can build additional remediation. So over time, they'll have deeper levels of remediation at exactly the points the data tell them they need it. But it's a kind of a paradigm shift in thinking about content development and remediation.
Yeah, and so Rob, you didn't tell me I was going after Wiley. This is I'm sure this is, okay, I need to be jumping around more, I need to move faster.
He made us do Sudoku. So.
Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah, this is
My question, Tom, is are you wearing tennis shoes?
No, yeah, I need to make some serious adjustments here. Did you have a question you wanted to add on?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, John, this is Charles, and I'm just, for either of you, Tom or John, it seems like there are implications to breaking down instruction to its very smallest fine-grained piece. Sometimes that's good, but sometimes you can lose the forest for the trees, right? And
Absolutely.
So I'm just wondering if you would comment on that aspect of the endeavor that you're undertaking.
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that first. There are some things, like say you're teaching how to solve the quadratic equation, for lack of a better example. that's a good example where you probably do want to break it down to its finite components. There are other cases where that doesn't make sense. Like if you're saying, read an article and critically analyze the arguments in it and compare it to other arguments in the same domain, you probably don't want to break that down to like, do you know how to read? There's a level at which it doesn't make sense, the different learning and learning assessment contexts. And without going into like a whole bunch more detail, I think that's where instructional designers and subject matter experts, whoever, just need to be situationally aware and have a rigorometer, I guess, for lack of a better term, about how granular to get with the content tagging and granularity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think John answered it well, so I'll just leave it there. But so one thing I'd like, because I know time is short, I'd like to, well, that clock, I'm not even going to look at that clock anymore because right here I think I have accurate time. So
yeah, and I do have a hard stop in about 26 minutes. So.
Okay, all right. So I'll hand it over to you in about 5. How's that?
That's perfect. That's great.
Okay. So what I would like you to imagine for a second, and it'll kind of save a lot of slides here, but just imagine that you're in a system that essentially you begin a course with 2 things. You take a pretty extensive pretest, and you're told at the beginning, don't worry if you don't understand. These are all concepts that are going to be taught in the course. We just want to know what you know right now. What's your baseline? Where are you starting? So you take that pretest, and then it gives you feedback. It's multiple choice, so it's auto-graded, and it gives you feedback right away. And then it basically says, you have some abilities, and you can. We would recommend that you study everything except for maybe these first couple of modules. From there, you're taken to a screen where essentially you have a slider, and it has all of your milestones laid on a calendar, and you can basically slide it and change change your end date. And so you can say, I need to be done by this time, or that's my goal. And so you slide it over and you make sure that you're going to be done, the week before Christmas or something like that. So, but if you slide it to the extreme, you can see that, hey, I could be done the day after tomorrow. I wouldn't be able to sleep. It just basically, that slider allows you to control how much, it's how much time are you willing to give per day, and it allows you to make that determination for yourself. And then once you lock it in, you move into the first sections, and in the first sections it actually has a little notation that says we recommend that you move through this quickly or that you skip this because based on your pre-assessment results. And then from that point on, you move through a series of readings and videos, through a series of practices, all formative, and even during all of those practices, you can at any point say, show me another example. You can click and say, give me, well, you have layers of hints. You could say, give me another hint. You've got 3 deep on the hints, and then after that you can say, just step me through a parallel example. So it steps you through solving that parallel example. If you still don't get it, then you just say, hey, step me through this one because I still don't get it, and then it'll take you through to the solution or conclusion. Now I realize that it obviously depends on the domain, but that's the kind of that kind of environment is something that allows for a lot of flexibility. But now add to that the fact that the support structures that would go with it, and these are common. As John mentions, all of these are options, but it's common to have some coaching around that. And so you're getting a weekly call from a faculty coach who is essentially who's going to walk you through your entire degree. So not just for that course, but for the entire degree. They're going to be checking in with you weekly, and they can review your progress online. They can obviously see how you're doing, but then they can talk to you about how to meet your goals and just help keep you motivated and all of that. And then in addition, you also have, that coach can then refer you to faculty experts in the courses that you're enrolled in. And so you can, you can get the help at the level that you need it. They may have some basic understanding of the domain, but they would refer you on to the professor to resolve issues that can't be resolved with your mentor. That's one way of thinking of this, of competency-based learning. There's a lot there that's optional and that you can take or leave, but in essence it's allowing it creates that kind of flexibility. Yeah, quick question.
So you mentioned the goal is to, you start off beginning talking about 2 sigma effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically you're saying, look, we see this increase that happens when people have tutoring. And so let's look at Bloom's research on the 2 sigma, and we're using prerequisites and we're using mastery learning, which were the 2 things that together most closely came up to this tutoring. It's interesting hearing you talk about this, and you've had the experience with the scale of this at Western Governors, but it sounds like basically the answer is tutor everybody, right? And so the question then becomes, how difficult does that become? Because it looks like what we're really trying to do is give everybody the individual experience, where you've got a coach, you've got a mentor, you've got your instructional designer. Those may all be different people. So
yeah, and the crazy thing about that is that it can actually be cheaper than what we're doing today, and that's where it just kind of gets a little, it gets really crazy, and I need to throw it over to John, but I'll wrap here by just saying, good job to me. I got through 3 slides. I think I have like 40. But no, but I think that figuring out what the technology can do well and what it can't do well. I don't think technology can do it all. And so at this point, certainly we don't go into any kind of client engagement saying this is going to be cheaper on day one. Western Governors University hasn't raised tuition. They charge $3,000 for 6 months. It's like a subscription model, like Netflix. $3,000. They haven't raised tuition in 5 years. In that 5 years, they chose to also cover all the costs of all the learning materials, all the textbooks and everything is now rolled into that $3,000. So it's actually less money than it was 5 years ago. So, and unless there's like a drug business on the side, I mean, somehow they're making it work, right? There's if there's a cartel that we discover that's tied to WGU, we'll understand that. Oh, that's how they did it. But anyway, I think the efficiency comes from the calls with mentors are targeted, they're focused. The data from the technology helps the mentors see where the students are struggling, so they don't have to talk about everything. They just talk about the areas that are difficult, and ultimately the faculty they're engaging more one-on-one than probably traditional faculty would. Their office hours are all the time, so because someone else built, the course was designed and built, and they're essentially making sure that all students are able to get to that bar of mastery that's been established. And so it really is a model where everyone can succeed. Time is now the variable, learning is the constant, or mastery, and that's really upside down from what we have today, because why do we have grades? We have grades because time ran out, right? Time ran out and I got a C. That's lame, I mean, I realize it's a little more than that, but I'm just saying that.
Yeah. Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
One corollary to that. Do you guys know about there's a hematology course that's taught on campus at BYU, and to pass, you have to get a 95%. And the point is, you don't want somebody in a blood lab at a hospital making mistakes. So their standard is pretty close to perfection. And that's the model that essentially we're saying should exist in every context. Why should we allow people to be failing to achieve their learning goals?
Yeah, and if you play games with points and you can say, gosh, I don't even need to study the last chapter, or I can skip the final, then you haven't learned everything that was in that course. You just figured out that the numbers worked in your favor and you could kind of bail on the last chapter or whatever. And
Nobody in this room would have ever done that.
that would never happen.
Only
Yeah.
on D.
Anyway, John, I'll turn it over to you, and then we can take some
Okay.
questions.
Yeah, cool. Let's see. So can you guys
Let me get.
see my screen now?
Let me just.
Oh, I'm giving away my magic. Hold on.
Okay. Tell me when you're. Okay. Hang on.
So I have some slides that have a lot of screenshots from what I'm talking about that you can check out on SlideShare. If you go to
Whoa, are you still there? Go-to meeting. You can't quit on us. Hang on. Okay, I'm gonna get back in. Someone think of a joke right now.
Does anybody know the SlideShare URL?
He was about to say
Here.
You just go to slideshare.net/John Mott.
Yeah. I'll just get him. I'll get him back on audio.
Well, maybe while we're waiting, and I can just throw
Hang
this
on.
out there. This is, I think, we've been talking here, Dan and I can hear him chatting back there. This is related to a lot of the work we're doing with badges. And maybe if you can talk while thinking, Tom, and if not, maybe other people can. How could badging facilitate what's going on with Western governors and with some of these other competency-based things, and what might be some of the challenges that we would continue to face as we develop a badging solution to some
Right.
competency-based education?
Well, I'll just say badging does two things. It adds motivation. It also chunks.
There is one other caller on the call.
John, you're back. We were just talking about badging.
how about now? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So sorry, you probably saw my slides and I ruined my punchline. But can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah. Hang on. I'm moving you over to the other screen. So just there was a question, by the way, as we were getting reconnected. There was a question about badging, and just sort of the work that's happening
I'll talk
here.
about that in just a minute if we want to hold on that.
Yep, that sounds good. Okay, you are on.
So did you guys see this slide?
No.
Okay, so I have a slide deck up on SlideShare that has screenshots of a lot of the stuff that I'm going to show you if you're interested in that deck. And then that's my Twitter handle. And on Twitter, I almost exclusively talk about individualized, personalized learning, ed tech, stuff like that. So if you're not interested in what I had for breakfast, don't follow me on Twitter, because I won't post it there. But kind of adding on to what Tom was talking about, imagine you've got this guy who was a medic in the Army, and he shows up at BYU and wants to be a nursing student. Okay? And then you've got this guy, fresh out of high school. And he also wants to be a nursing student.
There's no hope.
Does it make any rational sense in any planet that you can think of to have them start at the exact same point in a nursing degree? But that's what we do. So essentially what Tom and I are talking about is that the learning platform has to evolve to support the learning models that we care about. So essentially we have this, or we still have predominantly an LMS model, where essentially the learning technology is a degree companion. You're sent to these siloed courses inside LMS that have syllabi and a variety of tools. More recently, we've had sort of MOOCs and OCW, and they're running on LMSs or proprietary platforms like edX, but they're primarily non-enrolled, unstructured enrichment experiences. So they're a step forward in some ways, but in some ways they're a step backward because they're not even aligned with a credential. And what Tom's talking about is essentially we need a platform that does this. And there's a lot of stuff going on here. But if you could imagine that in a learning platform, you basically have a competency map. And you say, here are the competencies that are associated with my program. And here are the sub-competencies and the supporting learning objectives and the supporting skills and knowledge components that roll up to each one of those. And then I have tools for doing diagnostics and personalized learning plans and giving people formative assessments and guiding them to the learning activities that they need. And then off to the side, I have tools for creating content and assessments that are aligned with my competencies and the various supporting objectives. And then based on student achievements, I can give them credentials at the competency level or sub-competency level. And then of course I need to support all the social and peering and mentoring. That's the paradigm shift we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Question.
There's a question here.
Go ahead.
So is it, so the model is shifting from you got an A, B, C, D, or fail to, like, what's the credential now? It's not a letter grade, it's a badge, is that an example? You got the badge in this, or what's another way
So
to
a
say
badge is an example, but it's a micro-credential. Like an example we use in our business a lot, we have 45 engineers, developers that work at our company. And when we hire a new one, every single resume we get, people claim that they know how to do JavaScript. But we have no idea what that means. Even if they have a computer science degree from MIT, we have no idea what it means when they say they know how to do Java. But if there was a clickable badge on that resume that took us to a badge provider and it told us what that person had to do to prove that they knew how to do Java, and it said the date they earned it, and maybe there's even some Java they wrote running on that page, that's a different model.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
So it's not a letter, it's now proof of learning.
Well,
yes.
but I mean, I still think that there's something to be said for easy ways to sort of chunk. Thanks. Easy ways to chunk the and transmit the definition of what the mastery is. You know, what has been mastered. Yeah. And I think badges are one way, a very granular way, micro credentialing. But I think in a broader sense, I mean, WGU issues transcripts that have pass all the way down, and then you can actually you can dig into each one of those and you can see specifically what that pass represents and at what level. So you know, it needs to be. It's kind of like you need to be able to collapse it all down to something that's. That's why we have degrees, right? It's because people don't have time to go into all the details.
Yeah, Tom, you mentioned this earlier. One of the challenges we're going through is we're in a world in transition, and WGU has found this out, that giving a competency transcript is great, but if a student wants to apply to grad school, they need a different kind of transcript. So they've had to start to do like equivalency calculations of this competency transcript equals this kind of grade transcript that you can take to apply to grad school. So without getting too much deeper into that, there's a bunch of issues we got to work through on that whole side of it. I'm not going to delve into this a whole lot, but you all understand that the LMS is not designed for CDL, so we need a different kind of platform. And Tom's company and my company, we both have one. I'm going to skip a couple things.
Oh, and John,
just for the sake of time.
Yeah, just a heads up, we've been given the 2-minute warning, so I mean, you can take it and just run with what's, hit your your highlights.
Let me do this really quick then. So, can you see my cursor moving over this?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so imagine starting with a competency database as a starting point for curriculum management. When you say, here are the competencies that we care about, I'm going to package those into different programs and then offer those to learners. Based on those competencies then, I'm going to author content and assessment and activities that are aligned with them. Students then take competency assessments, which will drive individualized learning plans that guide them to the activities that they need. We're collecting data all throughout the process to update their learning plans, to update our assessments of what they can do. That's generating artifacts that also go into the assessment process, but ultimately we're driving this competency transcript. So this is not a perfect schematic, but this is sort of what the new architecture starts to look like, I think. And that's the end.
Well, I can tell we're going to need to learn some more about this because we just scratched the surface. Huh? Thank you, John.
Hey, can I make one last pitch?
Go for it.
I occasionally, so Rob Nyland is working for me a little bit right now. I occasionally need grad students to do projects, either background research on this stuff, development projects around this stuff, or evaluation projects of like, when we release this out into the wild, does it actually work? So if any of you are interested, I'm very happy to talk to you. I mean, they can be tiny projects or big projects, but happy to provide you opportunities if this is something you're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to make a parallel pitch. I'll pay $1 an hour more than yeah. Actually,
I'll throw in a badge.
Nice, touche. No, actually, yeah. Also at Helix Education, we're also going to be looking for some additional instructional design help full time within the near future. So I'll definitely be in touch with the department, and this it would be a Salt Lake based thing. So you don't have to fly to DC.
Well, thank you for both Tom and John for presenting. We'll have to have you back again sometime to flesh out more deeply what we got, the surface stuff, you know, the beginning, the intro to today. But thank you very much. We invite you to, Tom, John, you can't come have soup with us downstairs, but Tom, you and your family are welcome to come downstairs to the IP&T offices. We just have informal soup kitchen and chat, and so you're welcome to come down and join us there.
And then just, I wasn't expecting such a crowd, but I have some different information about Helix Education. If you have a particular interest, then just come up here and I've got some things. Oh, and I also brought some swag, and I don't know how to give this away.
How about first come, first served?
We might have an ad rush. But there was
its upcoming chili cook-off competition.
Prizes. Why don't we just donate this to the swag fund?
Let's give Tom a big...
Everybody.
Yeah, thank you, John. See ya.
You be in charge of this
for
the
sure.
chili cook-off?
Yeah, I can take care of that. Yeah. Sure. Fine.